So the anticipation has been killing us. What are these trumpets about?
Yeah.
We've been through the seals. This is the seventh seal. The trumpets are within the seventh seal. Yeah. So let's get into it. What we need to remember tonight, going forward, I'm going to put up something I put up when we first started Revelation 1. Just a short bit here. These two words we're going to have to remember. Abstract, which means existing in thought, or just an idea, but not having a physical or concrete existence. That's when we look through the text and hear Yahushua's voice and he shows us things, which is definitely applicable to these visions because they're visions, they're dreams. And then the other word is illusion. John is not usually using anything that's not been used before. Illusion is an expression designed to call something to mind without mentioning it explicitly, using an indirect or passing reference. So John, unlike other writers, doesn't go quoting all these different scriptures from the Old. He just says a word here or something and you're supposed to know what he's talking about. So that's called illusion. Revelation is, of course, a dream, a vision, an appearance of something striking. It's been pretty striking so far, hasn't it? Yeah. We're up to, we're finishing chapter 8 today. So that's just a revision because when we get to I think it's the third or the fourth trumpet, it's all about this thing called wormwood. And we're going to need these two words. We're going to need the literal and we're going to need the cosmic abstract. What could it mean to us? Quick summary here. The only scripture at this, that's from the old one, no, this one here. The Lamb has opened the seventh seal, that's what we're up to. The Lamb has opened the seventh seal and there is silence in the heaven. Remember this? A place always filled with praising and celebration. Yahushua takes all the prayers. Wait, go sit over there. Go sit over there. Or over there. Like I told you to. Yahushua takes all the prayers offered by his people since the beginning of time. He mixes them with the divine fire of his judging wrath and hurls them into the earth at the sound of each mighty blast of the trumpets. So this is really an amazing thing because for millennium there's been praising and celebration and suddenly everyone goes quiet. Watch out, something's about to happen. And it gives us hope and strength because all our prayers are heard. Every single prayer from everybody since Adam has been heard. He's taking them all and he's mixing them with divine fire and throwing it to the earth. And as he does it, there's trumpets blasting. So let's read about these trumpets. The first trumpet. Put that down, please. Be still. When the first angel blasted his trumpet, I saw hail and fire mixed with blood, and they were hurled to the earth, and a third of the trees were burnt up, and all the green grass was scorched. No, I think that third is just, we're not going to draw a line on the earth and that third there. No, it just means a limited judgment. This is limited to a part of the earth so far. What's coming will be, as we know, global annihilation. But at this point, a third just refers to the fact that it's limited at this point. The whole world is not directly affected yet.
There's a lot of trees being burnt down globally.
Yeah. In fact, some people were throwing up these pictures saying Australian bushfires a couple of years ago was a fulfilment of this, apparently by the percentage of earth that was burnt or something like that. So I agree. A third of the whole earth is a lot still. So these 7 trumpets are more intense than the 7 seals. Not as bad as the bowls of wrath that are coming. However, all the trumpets, seals and bowls of wrath all end at the same time. So I believe they're all going to overlap and just intensify. Of course, hearing about hailstones that are lighting into fire. Remember the hailstones that burst into flames when they hit the land of Egypt? The hail struck the fields, people, animals, and every plant growing and broke every tree. So the reason I'm bringing this to mind is because a lot of people just read these scriptures and go, oh, it's symbolic. The fire stands for the government or something like that. Well, Nobody would have been standing around in Egypt going, that hailstone that just hit your house and destroyed your whole family, that stands for something. No, it's literal judgment. It was literal, hit your house, hit your farm, hit your cattle, boils all over your body. It was literal. So why can't it be? Why wouldn't it be literal here?
Yeah.
It can mean other things in the abstract, but it's going to be literal as well. And as we see on the news, the world is crumbling. The result of the Egyptian judgment was localized only to the land of Egypt. But in Revelation, a third of the entire landmass of our planet is burnt up from hail that uncharacteristically bursts into flame upon hitting the ground. A third of all the trees and all green grass is destroyed. And yeah, that's happening globally, isn't it? All over the world, fires. Why would Yahushua keep increasing the awful effects of the judgments? Well, just like Egypt, it was to drive even the most stubborn into submission and repentance. Many people will cry out for deliverance, no longer able to deny that everything prophesied thousands of years earlier is now happening just as written. And yet many more will harden themselves like the Pharaoh, that despite their suffering and afflictions, they would rather curse Yahushua for their troubles rather than seek him for forgiveness and mercy. So what was the first trumpet? In one sentence?
Fire and blood.
Fire, blood that explodes into flames, yeah? Hailstones, burning hailstones. When the second angel blasted his trumpet, I saw what looked like a great mountain burning with fire, thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea. So we did the land, now we're doing the sea. A third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Again, limited judgment. How many documentaries and things are talking about the sea, the animal life, the coral, the ships being destroyed, the pollution, the this, the that? At least, I'd say a third. So I think we're definitely living in this. There's a lot of debate whether the water actually turns to literal blood or it's red like blood, in which case either.
There's a river that's red
Mm,
because of pollution and everything.
certainly is.
It's turned red.
Mm.
If you think about it, if a third of the animals died, then it'd be from the blood.
Yeah.
That's how I'm seeing it.
The water would turn blood,
Mm.
blood red. However, Egypt says turned to blood. So we're going to follow the same pattern.
Mm.
The second trumpet is sounded, and the sea, the salt water, is afflicted with judgment. What looked like a blazing mountain was hurled into the sea, with the results that a third of the earth's seas turned to blood, and so all the sea life of those waters died out, and a third of the ships operating nearby were destroyed. Just like in Egypt, when the waters turned into a blood-coloured, undrinkable mess, killing the fish that the Egyptians relied on and causing a huge stench. So, all this stuff we see on a daily basis, aren't we? Again, like the Nile River plague, this blazing mountain might be an enormous volcano, or perhaps a large meteor. Could be something that hits the water from above. Something that is so worrisome that we have NASA watching the solar system to detect any huge chunks of rock that might collide with the Earth. Something they say is inevitable. So, could be literal, it could be abstract, but so far it's all playing out literally when we look at the news. And let's go to the third angel. When the third angel blasted his trumpet, a great star fell from the sky, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the fountains of water, and the name of the star is called Wormwood. And a third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the waters because they were made bitter. Again, limited judgment, but this is talking about the fresh water now. The third angel blew his trumpet, and the fresh water of the earth was assaulted. Remember who's assaulting them? Who's hurling these prayers mixed with fire, turning them into a judgment and hurling them at the earth? Husha is. Don't lose sight of that. Third angel blew his trumpet, and the fresh water of the earth was assaulted. 1/3 of the earth's rivers and springs and lakes were affected when something like a blazing star fell into them. This also sounds like a meteor, but could be something else entirely. The blazing star is given the name wormwood, which means in Hebrew bitterness, that which turns something bitter. So the fresh water becomes so contaminated that it's completely unusable.
There's places that already have this.
Yeah,
You can't drink the water, for example, Bali.
exactly right. Exactly right. Bitter, could be pollution. Why is he using the word, why didn't he just say bitter? Why is he using the word wormwood? There's 3 scriptures here so we can get what he's talking about. Because remember, he doesn't bring up anything new. He's referring to his colleagues almost like, remember this? Jeremiah says, therefore, this is what Yahuwah says concerning the prophets. I will feed them bitter wormwood and make them drink poisonous water. Now, he's not talking about prophets in Revelation, but we're just getting an idea of where this word wormwood comes from and what it means. In Amos 5, O you who are turning right ruling to wormwood, bitterness, and have cast down righteousness to the earth. Jeremiah 9, and Yahuwah says, because they have forsaken, this is why he's doing it, because they have forsaken my Torah and have not obeyed my voice, but have walked according to the stubbornness of their own heart, I am making them eat wormwood, and I shall make them drink poisoned water. Who's doing this? So I want to read you an excerpt from a book that was written a few years ago. Got it from Fossilized Customs. It talks all about wormwood. This is another interesting perspective just to think about with this whole literal and abstract understanding. I don't agree with every part of it. The fruit is the behaviour, we know that. The result of what we have sown, we apparently have sown in our hearts. Do we do the sowing? No. The seed is the covenant, the vows of living we commit our lives to live by. It is the will of Yahuwah, the way, the truth, and the life. I think myself the seed is a whole lot more than the covenant, the power of it, the transforming power. If we change his seed, he's talking about wormwood here. If we change his seed, we become like genetically modified organisms and an abomination. If we are taught alterations of the 10 Commandments by men, we are living on wormwood. So he's taking this literal thing into an abstract teaching area, taking it here for a reason. Our foundation, if we change the commandments, our foundation is rotten to the core. We can talk about fruit all day long, but without the seed planted in us, will remain unchanged. The seed comes first, then the fruit. We know that. Yahuwah told us he was coming to burn the earth because of this one thing. It says that up in the scripture. The earth is completely emptied and utterly plundered, for Yahuwah has spoken this word. The earth shall mourn and wither, the world shall languish and wither, the haughty people of the earth shall languish. Why? For the earth has been defiled under its inhabitants, because they have transgressed the Torah, changed the law, broken the everlasting covenant. So, what he's saying is that there's physical wormwood and spiritual wormwood. One's literal, one's abstract. Physical wormwood is bitterness, as Therese was saying. It's happening all over the world. This could be caused by asteroids, war, poison, disease, floods, earthquakes, radiation, crime. It's physical, it's literal, we can see it. Spiritual, abstract wormwood, bitterness, this is seen in the behaviour of people and is the result of ignoring or altering the instructions of Yahuwah. I agree with that. It's like a programming flaw or a computer virus that corrupts from the inside. The origin of this wormwood is the spiritual realm, where our enemy works through people, corrupting their hearts with strongholds, which is faulty thinking. So there's the literal way to look at it, and there's the figurative way. Misinterpretations can corrupt our understanding and impact our behaviour. Consider, this was interesting, consider Psalms 1. He is like, this is the opposite of wormwood, he is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Confusing idiomatic abstractions to be literal, we mistake what Yahuwah means. So, taking things from the scripture and reading them literally when they're supposed to be abstract, we can stuff it up. We miss what Yahuwah means. Here we see that Yahuwah's word expresses his abstract thoughts. A person who meditates on the Torah of Yahuwah is like these things. He's like a tree, upright, righteous one, obedient. Streams of living water are his living words. The fruit is good, clean, good behaviour, good character. Unwithered leaf is prosperity. Being held in a demonic stronghold is like a computer virus corrupting our thinking. Wormwood leads to madness. I like that statement, because Yahuwah says, if you're not going to obey me, if you're going to change my instructions, if you're going to be disobedient, if you're going to worship idols and do all this stuff, I will feed you wormwood. I will give you wormwood, and wormwood is madness. What do we see in the world?
Madness.
Are they drinking from the bitterness? Drinking from the insanity? Definition of psychosis. Psychosis is a loss of contact with reality that usually includes false beliefs about what is taking place or who one is, completely delusional. Seeing or hearing things that just aren't there. Hallucinations, which is what's happening in the world. They can't see the spiritual realm. They don't know that they've got masses of spirits just clinging to them, controlling them. A person's thinking is corrupted when they follow men's teaching authority. Everything he's saying comes from a teaching, knowledge, authority. They've changed the knowledge, they've changed the name, they've changed that, which essentially is true, but I want to take it further. So a person's thinking is corrupted when they follow men's teaching's authority, shun the Torah. If they do not speak according to Torah, they have no light. That's true. If they turn their ears away from hearing Torah, even their prayer is an abomination. So plenty of people are praying in the world, but they've turned their ears away from Yahushua's instructions. So is he listening? What's he hurling at them? Wormwood, trumpets, judgments. So, whether this wormwood is referring to spiritual wormwood or actual literal poisoning or both, we can now see why John uses the word wormwood to describe the poisoning of a major portion of the earth's fresh water. For it's a term that the Jews were quite familiar with at the time, wormwood. So it could be both. I don't like looking at too many things like cosmic, it's spiritual wormwood is in teachings and behaviour in a sense, because I think it excuses the fact that there is going to be literal fire falling from the sky, there's going to be literal poisoning, there's going to be boils, everything that we saw in Egypt we're going to see in the earth. But I also agree that there is definitely an abstract component to it, in which case, well, for the last 2,000 years the waters have been polluted, haven't they? There was big, into the dark ages. The disciples were killed off and it just went dark. The movement went underground and sort of fizzled out. And then religion took over. Religion is poisoned water. It's wormwood, feeding people poison. Because you can't get any deliverance from it. There's no life in it. So in that aspect, we can look at it abstractly. In which case, this trumpet's happening. Fourth trumpet. When the fourth angel blasted his trumpet, 1/3 of the sun was struck, and 1/3 of the moon, and 1/3 of the stars, so that 1/3 of them were darkened, and 1/3 of the day did not shine, and also the night. So this is full on, isn't it? Sun, moon and stars. Significantly less sunlight means Earth's climate would change drastically. What's everyone complaining about?
Climate change.
I mean, I don't see the sun going out for a whole third lot longer, or moon or stars going, but still, it's starting to happen. It's starting to happen. Significant less sunlight means Earth's climate would change drastically. It would immediately cool. Cooler weather means shorter growing seasons. Some areas would have a permanent winter, and so no crops would grow at all.
The days would be shortened as well.
Yeah, totally. Less heating from the sun also means that the wind patterns would change. And because solar generation of electrical power is growing rapidly around the world, in both industrialised nations and third world countries, the output of electricity from that source would seriously diminish. So all these things you can feel are just about to happen. People are talking about them happening. I don't see it happening as dramatically as what I think and what I'd like to see it happen, but you can definitely see the seeds of it happening in the world now. So that's the 4 trumpets. We're going to do the 4th trumpets because right in between the first 4 and the last 3, there's these eagles, or vultures, I want to call them. So we've done the first 4 trumpets tonight. What was the first one?
The hailstones.
Hailstones, ignite. Second one?
The mountain that
Yeah.
goes into the sea.
Yeah, earth, sea life. Third one?
Wormwood, fresh water.
And the 4th one is the sun, moon and stars. Putting out there, being snuffed out a third of the time. So then before the next trumpets we get this here. Then I looked and I heard an eagle, it's actually closer to a vulture, flying through the sky, crying out with a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to those dwelling on the earth. Watch out because of what's coming when the last 3 remaining trumpets blast." So, however bad the first 4 were, watch out, because what's coming is going to be bad. An eagle is seen as among the most powerful and formidable of all birds, as it is quite large and dangerous for a flying creature, and often the scripture uses this to speak of those attributes. But from a scriptural standpoint, it's also an unclean bird, not to be eaten. In fact, so closely related are they in purpose and size, eagles and vultures. The Hebrew word for eagle and vulture is the same. And when you look at the context, it's a lot more fitting to see vultures circling around, isn't it? Because of what they're about to get. So because of the context here, we see this eagle and its cries of woe, woe, woe as an expectation that scavenger birds, vultures, are about to be able to eat their fill because of the horrors remaining from the final 3 trumpet judgments, which we will read about next week. As terrible as the first 4 of the trumpet judgments have been, the remaining 3 represent such an escalation in human carnage that they are given their own special category and described as woes. So what's coming next week? It's not just normal trumpet judgments, they're called woes. What does this word woe mean? Woe means misery, distress, affliction, suffering, pain, anguish, sorrow, grief, misfortune, trouble. This is the first use of the word woe in Revelation, and it's a word of warning, sorrow and distress, which usually comes at a time when the mercy and long suffering of Yahuwah is about to end. Woe was the cry of the lamentation by the prophets upon Israel, and even the Gentiles when judgment was about to fall. Mercy ends and judgment follows. Yahusha hurled, this was interesting, Yahusha hurled 8 woes at the scribes and Pharisees right at the end of his earthly ministry, before his death. He put up with them for so long what they'd done, and then he hurled all these woes. When you read the scriptures, woe to you, for you're this, you're that. He did it 8 times. And they too, these woes, spoke of the coming desolation and destruction of the city of Jerusalem and the temple. Mercy, then judgment. So that's what woe means. These next 3 judgments that are coming are going to be horrendous. So, stay tuned for in the last 3 judgments, we'll see that Yahusha actually allows satanic powers to judge mankind. He allows it, just like he did with Job. Because if they won't listen to his forces of judgment through nature, most of what we've seen in the trumpets has been about nature, the sun, the moon, the stars, the ocean, fresh water, salt water, the earth, the grass, nature. If they won't listen to his judgments through the nature, then he'll bring the devastation even closer to home. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. That brings us to here. Revolution starts with revival. So, what was the first trumpet?
Hailstones.
Second trumpet?
The mountain to sea, the blood.
Third?
Wormwood.
Wormwood? Fourth?
Moon, stars.
And then we've got
And
three.
a warning.
Three warnings. The three woes. Whoa! Whoa, man. Whoa. Three woes. Alright?
Really different type of wars.
I'm pretty sure they are too, mate. So next week we're going to read about the last three. That's tonight's message, guys. And I can just see it, it's all happening in the world already. So it's pretty important.
They're definitely overlapping
Mm.
with everything that
Mm.
we've already
Definitely.
shown.
Anybody else want to add anything? All good? Love you, everybody.
Good.
Good night.
Thank you, love you.
Bye.
Black of peas came to make it hotter. We beat the fire starter, bubbling up just like lava, heated like a sauna, penetrating through your body armor. Rhythmically we massage ya, with hip hop mixed up with samba, So yes, y'all. You know we never stop, we never rest, y'all. The black of peas will keep it funky fresh, y'all. And we won't stop until we get y'all, say it.
Peter Piper pick peppers, but I rock rhymes. 1, 2, 3, 4, several times. Heavy rotation played by every kind. Radio station blessing every mind. We crossing boundaries like every day. Do Bobby, being the on the bay. We got tab magnification, tab magnify like every day.
So yes, y'all. You know we never stop, we never rest, y'all. The black of peas will keep it funky fresh, y'all. And we won't stop until we get y'all, say it.
Drop hot, be my daily operation. Gotta put in work in this crazy occupation. Gotta keep it moving, that's the motivation. Gotta ride the waves and keep a tight relation with my team. Keep it moving and doing it right. Up in the lab every day till daylight. That's the way things move in this monkey business.
We took an old samba song and remixed it.
Mas que nada sai da minha frente.